Brazilian lawmakers are expanding their influence over the executive branch, while many other democracies see the opposite shift. This is Omni View, episode 147. In Brazil, members of Congress have gained greater power relative to the president over the past decade. This runs counter to the pattern seen in several other countries where executives have consolidated authority. The shift involves changes in how legislation is shaped and budgets are handled. Lawmakers have applied constitutional tools repeatedly to adjust spending priorities and require broader coalition support for major bills. The result has been a measurable increase in legislative control over day-to-day policy decisions, without any formal change to the Constitution itself. The Economist describes the development as a reversal of a global pattern in which would-be autocrats have bent democratic institutions to their will. Brazilian lawmakers have used constitutional tools and coalition negotiations to limit presidential discretion on spending and policy priorities. Observers note that this has occurred through incremental legislative actions rather than a single event. The trend has drawn attention because it differs from developments in countries where executives have strengthened their position through decree powers or judicial appointments. The same publication highlights that a fragmented party system forces the executive to secure support from multiple blocs, giving those blocs ongoing leverage over both the content and timing of legislation. This incremental approach has produced a practical rebalancing of authority that remains within the existing constitutional framework. Shifting now to a legal dispute in the United States, Disney has filed a lawsuit against the Federal Communications Commission. The company claims the agency's move against its broadcast licenses amounts to retaliation for programming on networks including ABC. The dispute centers on whether regulatory decisions can be linked to specific shows. Court documents filed by Disney cite actions involving programs such as Jimmy Kimmel and The View as evidence of targeted enforcement. The lawsuit seeks to block the FCC challenge and asks the court to examine the procedural basis for the agency's steps. The Associated Press reports that Disney argues the FCC action targets content such as Jimmy Kimmel and The View. The commission has not publicly detailed its full rationale in the provided material. Legal proceedings will determine whether the challenge succeeds on procedural or constitutional grounds. The filing places the dispute within the framework of administrative law, where courts review whether an agency has acted within its statutory authority or crossed into viewpoint-based regulation. The outcome will hinge on evidence presented about the sequence of regulatory notices and the stated reasons for reviewing the licenses. Meanwhile, rates of sexually transmitted infections have increased in multiple European countries. Experts differ on the primary drivers behind the rise. The health consequences of the increase are not in dispute. National reporting systems have recorded higher case numbers across several infection categories over recent years. Public health agencies continue to monitor these figures through standardized surveillance methods. The Economist notes that sexual health specialists offer varying explanations for the surge, including changes in testing practices and behavior patterns. Public health agencies track the data through national reporting systems. The article emphasizes that the medical risks remain consistent regardless of the differing interpretations of causes. Some specialists point to expanded testing as a factor that reveals previously undetected cases, while others highlight shifts in social behavior after pandemic restrictions eased. The shared dataset shows rising reported infections across the region, even as the precise weight of each contributing factor remains under discussion among researchers. In Zambia, supporters of President Hakainde Hichilema celebrated in Lusaka after partial results showed him extending his lead. The 64-year-old is serving another term. Supporters point to economic improvements under his leadership, while critics raise concerns about limits on political dissent. Street gatherings in the capital reflected both the reported vote margin and the ongoing debate over governance style. Official tallies from the Electoral Commission continue to be released in stages. Reuters reports that backers credit Hichilema with reviving aspects of the economy. Opponents, including some opposition figures, argue that space for criticism has narrowed during his time in office. The election outcome reflects both the reported economic record and ongoing debates about political freedoms. Supporters emphasize measurable gains in certain economic indicators, while critics focus on documented cases of restricted assembly or expression. The partial results released so far have shaped public reactions in Lusaka and other urban centers. Home Depot recorded improved sales during the second quarter. Customers directed spending towards smaller home projects amid a continued slowdown in the U.S. housing market. The company attributed the pattern to seasonal demand for modest renovations. Quarterly figures showed growth in categories tied to maintenance and small upgrades rather than large-scale purchases. The housing sector's limited activity has persisted due to mortgage rates and inventory constraints. The Associated Press links the sales performance to the broader housing sector's limited activity. Mortgage rates and inventory constraints have kept larger purchases subdued. The quarterly figures provide one data point on consumer behavior in a constrained market. The company's results illustrate how households adjust spending when entry-level home buying remains difficult. Seasonal timing also played a role, with summer months traditionally favoring outdoor and repair projects. Sales of magnesium supplements have risen in recent periods. Some clinical trials have indicated benefits for sleep quality and migraine relief. Other trials have not shown consistent effects across all users. Market data indicate increased consumer purchases even as researchers continue to examine variable outcomes. The range of trial results leaves room for further study on dosage, population differences, and measurement methods. The Economist reports that the supplement market has expanded even as evidence remains uneven. Researchers continue to examine which populations may experience measurable gains. The variation in trial outcomes leaves open questions about individual responses. Some studies report statistically significant improvements in specific symptoms, while others find no reliable difference from placebo across broader groups. This mixed body of evidence shapes both consumer choices and ongoing scientific inquiry. Now, to really understand this story, there is something most coverage leaves out. Most coverage of executive-legislative relations assumes the president holds the stronger hand once elected. Yet Brazil's recent record shows Congress using budget amendments and coalition requirements to limit that power. In presidential systems, the Constitution typically divides authority, but the practical balance depends on whether lawmakers can force spending decisions through line item changes or require presidential signature on revenue measures. When a fragmented party system forces the executive to negotiate with multiple blocs for every major bill, those blocs gain leverage over policy detail and timing. Brazil's experience illustrates this mechanism. Repeated use of such tools has shifted day-to-day control without altering the formal constitution. The last several administrations have operated under these constraints, producing a pattern of negotiated budgets rather than unilateral executive proposals. Knowing this, when reports describe executive overreach elsewhere, readers can check whether the same legislative tools are present or absent in that country's rules. The concrete check is whether the national budget process allows Congress to earmark funds independently of the president's annual proposal. Observers tracking similar systems can compare amendment procedures and coalition requirements across countries to assess where legislative leverage is strongest. If you want to go deeper on institutional power shifts, compare how The Economist and AP News are covering the same developments. Tomorrow, watch for further details on the Zambian election results and any statements from opposition figures. That's Omni View. The news can feel heavy, but understanding what's actually happening and what's being done about it beats doom scrolling every time. Stay curious. Pick one story from today and read it from a second outlet you don't usually open. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network. Links in the show notes. This show comes to you from the NARA Network. If you want another sharp daily briefing, Offshore North has you covered. Offshore ocean racing explained every Monday with a Canadian angle. All our shows are free at naranetwork.com. The Do Positive Pod is the club for people who do something about it. Episodes and the dispatch wall at naranetwork.com, the DP Pod. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.